Hello. I'm unmuting you guys. Hi, gorgeous.
Hi. How are you?
Humans. I'm good.
Good. So fun to see Kathy. And hi, Alli. I think I get to see you later today too, or tomorrow.
I'm unmuting her.
Oh, there I am. Hi.
Hi. Of course, your hair game is so strong. And I woke up today and I'm like, how did I not plan to get a blowout? But I'm in Boca. Alli and I both lived here growing up. So I'm here for another week. And so I actually have the Drybar app. And I was like, oh, the closest one is in Fort Lauderdale and I'm not going to be able to go. So I'm just going to have to show up like this.
Boca. Maybe we don't.
I don't know.
Sorry, my voice. I've lost my voice. That's why I sound crazy. Sorry about that.
But you sound sexy.
Sexy radio voice. You got to record all your podcasts right now.
Mm-hmm.
Adrian has it too. So we both sound so ridiculous right now. He really like a TV host. He's like smooth jazz.
It's like Jessica Rabbit. I think it's great. Okay, so we're going to get into all the things. And part of the reason I wanted to have both of you here is so we could talk about your podcast. And of course, we're going to put a big chunk of this on my podcast. So it's just another great way to get my listeners aware of you. But this is such a special group. Lori's been around my community before. And these souls who are here today live are all people who have so much empathy and want to do more of putting good things in the world. They want to build things. They're makers, they're creators, they're all creative in some way. So I have a bunch of stuff I want to get into with both of you, and for sure we'll definitely talk about the podcast. Before we do, I feel like just in case, for some reason, if people are not aware, I feel like we should just kind of catch people up about where you've been real fast. So tell us the version you like to tell when you don't have to tell it for hours and hours about your transformation journey, where you came from and becoming an entrepreneur. Just tell us a little bit. Lori, you want to go first?
Oh, sure. Okay, let's see how fast we can do this. The older you get, the longer it gets too. That's the problem.
Oh, yeah.
So I came from a really small town, really religious background, realized that I had a lot of things that I wanted to do inside of myself, big dreams, but it wasn't encouraged at all in the kind of the family situation that I came from. So when I moved out of my house, fitness kind of ended up saving my life and became kind of the first spiritual awakening that I had. Anybody on here had that through fitness? Kind of walks, or you start running or doing something like that, and all of a sudden you start to just like get that glimmer of who you really are. So from that world, I really dove deep into the fitness world and started to train other people. I had my own gym. And by the way, I'm skipping over that. That was extremely challenging. But what ended up happening there is that I realized that I couldn't even remotely help people transform physically without the mental part. So no matter what we did, no matter how much they worked out, it was like, if we did not talk about their mindset and their beliefs and their environment, AKA their family and their friends, and what they had around them, that I couldn't help them at all. So that's really when I started diving deep into personal development. I was on my own journey. I had a lot of anxiety, a lot of panic attacks, really started to get into the personal development world, absolutely fell in love because it was working for me. And I just thought, oh my God, I want to share everything that's working for me. And I know that that's probably how a lot of you on here are. You had something work for you and you want to pay it forward, or you've been through a journey yourself and you want to pay it forward. And that's really what my journey has been throughout the years is, oh my gosh, this worked for me. Now I want to pay it forward. So did the whole personal development thing, had events, had courses, and then podcasting. Kathy's a huge inspiration for me as well on that. Love listening to the podcast. And then from there, really started to realize that I loved business, and then dove into this new world that I'm in that's super scary and crazy, which is a physical product. So that's my story.
Lori, and anyone who's known Lori for 1 second, she is so easy to love. You have somehow done all of those things without building a very big ego. And I think that that's probably something you and Alli share that is so rare. It's so rare. when Alli was on my podcast, I remember being like, I thought I was going to be so intimidated by you. Even though like we have some mutual friends from back in the day, I was still like, she's Alli Webb. And Lori, I felt the same way about you. And Lori from day one was one of the first people who like came up beside me, was like, I see you. I want to shine a light on you. And, you know, I met some of my best friends at your book launch party.
That's so cool.
Yeah, because you attract so many good people. I just think that that has to be said. So, way to be a good human being and so kind and staying true to your Midwest roots. So Alli, so everybody kind of knows the thing, the big thing, and now there's like many other things. Why don't you just tell that story that you told me when you were breastfeeding and then decided to start an empire? Talk about that journey.
Speaking of being humble, let me take my cough drop out of my mouth.
Oh my God. She went there. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, it's super fun losing your voice. Well, gosh, I mean, that's going back pretty far. You know, I've been a professional hairstylist forever. I went to beauty school in Boca Raton, which I don't even think it exists anymore. And, you know, I spent years jumping around and you know, working in hair salons. And then I moved to New York City and I worked at like the best hair salon there. And then I got married and had babies and thought I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And after about 5 years of that, I realized I didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom anymore. And I wanted to get back out there and I wanted to do something for myself. And I was, the story you're referring to is when I was sitting in my living room with my still best friend, Paige, and our babies were like all of like, I had my second son then, and you know, it was like 1 in 3 or something. And I was like, I just feel like I want to do something for myself. And, you know, and she happened to have really curly hair and always wanted me to blow it out. And most of my girlfriends did. And, you know, I was like, I've been thinking about starting a mobile blowout business and really not charging very much so that people would do this often, because I felt like there were probably enough women out there like me, you know, who, you know, weren't good at doing their own hair and had curly frizzy hair and didn't have time to do it, but didn't want to go spend $150 to go do it. So I was like, maybe I'll just charge like, I mean, we were literally like 220s. That seems easy. And like, that was like the extent of the business plan, you know? And we would, you know, basically go out to all our mommy friends. And at the time I had spent, for anybody who knows or lives in LA, there's a place called the Pump Station. And I was spending a lot of time there. And that's actually where I met Paige in like a breastfeeding support group. And I posted there, I posted on like a mommy like blog. And, you know, it was like, I will go and I'll come to your house while your baby's sleeping and give you a blowout. And I'll only charge you $40. And it was like, I was instantly busy. And, you know, at that point, it was just like thinking about getting out of the house for a couple hours and getting away from my kids and like doing something, you know, on my own. And I never imagined, I wasn't thinking about Drybar. That idea wasn't at all in my mind. It just, it did start to come up as I got so busy. And I realized like, you know, at this $40 price point, I'm getting a lot of clients because, you know, it's easy. I mean, at that point I was going to their house when their baby was sleeping, but you know, what I also realized very quickly was like, if I couldn't go to these women's homes, they didn't really have a good option. There was like hair salons were charging, you know, $150 for a blowout at that time. They've come down since we opened. Or there was like the discount chains, like the Fantastic Sam's, which are great businesses, but like you're sitting next to a kid getting a haircut, the lighting's bad, the experience sucks. Nobody wants to do that. So I was like, why don't we create a place that instead of me going to them, they come to me? And you know, that's when I went to my brother, who's my business partner, and said, I think I want to turn my mobile blowout business into a brick and mortar. And, you know, he, like most normal guys, and he's bald. He was like, what? Like, why can't women do this themselves? And I'm like, well, they can, they just can't do it as well historically. And I'm like, and I'm, you know, I'm pretty good at hair and it's still like a pain to do my own hair. You know, it's just easier. It's relaxing. Women love it, you know, and Michael really felt like my brother, this was like a very, you know, thing like LA thing, like women of LA have too much time and too much money on their hands and it'll work here. I'm like, I don't know. I really think that like women everywhere who have hair will like this, you know. And it was an interesting evolution because LA did totally work. Dallas, you know, Texas totally worked. And every city big city we opened and did work. It was like the Palo Alto and like, you know, Northern California, not San Francisco proper, but Northern California those women were hard to transform to Drybar. There was definitely a different demo there, and it was like brand new to them. So we had to like introduce this behavior. We're like, listen, bring your laptop. You can get your work done while you're getting a blowout. You're going to walk out feeling amazing. You're not going to have to touch your hair for 3, 4, 5, in some cases 2 weeks, and that was, and slowly that grew. And we did all start to realize like this concept works for women with hair, who, want to feel really great. And that was the other thing that was the big aha moment and so inspiring and amazing for us, is we realized we weren't selling just blowouts. We were selling the happiness and confidence, and you could see it. It was a real thing. You could watch a woman walk in and she was serious and all business and like grumpy. And then you watch her walk out and you're like, who the fuck is that? That is not the same woman who walked in 45 minutes ago. It was, I mean, truly, we had somebody do a story on us, and I should dig this up, called The Psychology of a Blowout. It was actually a good friend of mine. But before we were good friends, she sat in Drybar for 8 hours and she just watched behavior. And she wrote this amazing article about the transformation, the physical transformation women made, and like their whole demeanor and this pep in their step and looking at every mirror and just like light and happier. And we were like, oh my God, we're really onto something. And, I think we knew very early on, but that was a big indicator. It's like, this is changing women's lives, which I know sounds lofty and crazy. It's a blowout, but it really was it made such an impact, and it continues to make such an impact on women. And it is a quick pick me up, and it's a feel good thing. And, we continue to take that feel good feeling into massage and now therapy, and for me, jewelry. So, we're riding that wave. That's for sure.
Oh, it's so good. And it really is such a pick me up. Type a 1 in the chat if you've ever been to Drybar, because a bunch of you are already saying that you were. This is just like, let's just see. Yeah. I just feel like for years, even before I ever knew that I would meet you or ever even had enough money still for all of my girlfriends, that's what I would give them for birthdays. And it was always like, oh, thank you so much. I get to go to the Drybar and just take
gift. I mean, we realized that too. It was like, what a great gift. It's like the gift of great hair. We were like, so yeah, it was pretty crazy. It was like, it's been a wild ride. I mean, we're 11 years into it now, and yeah,
it is incredible. It really, really is incredible. It's hard to really wrap words around how awesome it is what you built. And all of the pieces of what you just said really feed into it. It's the transformation story. That's what you're selling. You're selling that moment for them. So I want to break this down, because people who listen to this podcast and people who are here, everybody wants to be able to get there, but we have to begin. We have to jump over those little lily pads to get to that place. Before we have the empire, we actually have to start to get proof of concept. So the very first thing for both of you, and I want you both to answer this for your own, based on your own experience. The first thing was Alli's like posting at the pump station. And the first thing is, Lori, you're probably, telling people that you're willing to teach them fitness or however that looked. That first step of being willing to raise your hand, that first step of putting yourself out there for so many people is where everybody is already derailed. What does that feel like? And you've done it over and over and over and over again now. You've had many new ideas and new ventures where you've had to, again, raise your hand and put something out there. What helped you and what continues to help you to do that when you feel that rush of imposter syndrome, when you feel uncomfortable because you don't yet have proof of concept, but you're going to put it out there anyway? What could help somebody learn from your experience and give them the strength to go ahead and do that?
I'll go just because it's popping right into I'm there right now again. So you guys, I'm all back in that same boat with you with a brand new product. I'm starting a light wine seltzer rosé company, which is it also has a non-alcoholic rosé. And with that said, this is very different than anything that I've ever done. So it all starts the same. And let me tell you that you can think that you've overcome something, and with a new thing in a new arena, it just all bubbles back up. Like you never outrun it. You just get familiar with how it goes. Like, and it's all the same map. Okay, you have an idea, you get excited, you get that feeling where you're like, you're like levitating, right? Like you have more energy than you felt like you've had in years because you're so excited over this thought or this idea. Raise your hand if you've ever been there. And all of a sudden you start to think of like integrating it or sharing it, and you get super freaked out. And you're like, well, that's stupid. That's so stupid. Why would I ever be able to do that? And, you know, I think in the beginning, what really drove me was I was in so much pain from not doing it. I got to that place where I felt like it was consuming me whole and waking me up at like 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. at night. Put in the chat box, yes, if you know what I'm talking about right now, where it's just like waking you up at night because you know that you need to do it, but you're not doing it because during the day when you think about saying it out loud, you're freaked out. Okay, awesome. Great, all of you, amazing. Okay, so this is going to happen over and over and over again. This is literally what has happened to me. Number one, what I want to just like show all of you that you have done is you've done the very first most important step of supporting your dream, and that is getting into a community where it's safe to share it. And that's getting into a community in a place where you are going to be held accountable. And the more that you can show up in those communities and speak what it is that you want to do, the more you're going to be able to do that. So my first step whenever anybody's like, oh my gosh, I want to do this thing, I'm like, you need to go and tell people. You need to start talking about it as much as possible and say, you know, even if this makes you feel better, which I don't even recommend it, but if it makes you feel better, sometimes it feels good to say, I have this crazy idea. I don't even know if it could come true, but here's what I would love to do, right? And then insert idea. And you tell as many people as you possibly can. You put it into communities. And what's going to happen is someone is going to go, you can do that. I did that. You know, it's easy, or this is what it looks like. And when they say easy, it's just there's steps, you guys, that you start taking. So the first thing is just proclaiming it, getting it out there, getting in that community, and then saying what you really want. Like, I want to be held accountable to this. I would love to get this out there. Does anybody out there also want to, you know, support each other within our ideas? So maybe you find one other person that you're going to hold each other accountable. And that's really how I've done it with every single pivot, is that whenever I get an idea, I start pivoting and hanging around people who I know are either doing the thing or have done it before, because they're going to speak life into you. The one thing that you don't want to do is go and share your dream in a place where you know it's going to be killed. And sometimes I think we self-sabotage ourselves with that. We're like, oh, I'm going to share this big crazy idea with my family who's killed every other dream that I've ever had before. Like, don't do that. Like, wait until it's a safe place to do that. It's really funny. I want to share just because, you know, as I started a physical product, I really wanted to be around women who have brought something big to life, like a physical product or, you know, one of their big ideas. And that was one of the reasons I reached out to you, Alli, is because I wanted to start pivoting to be around women who have brought something like maybe that never existed to life before, or people who had brought products to life. Like, that was a really big thing for me to start kind of switching who I was hanging around and listening to. And talking with. So that was a big, scary thing for me to reach out to Alli to get her into my atmosphere so that I could grow and be around that. So that's kind of a cool idea of where that even started.
See, that's just so like you, because you tell us all the cool things that you have the courage to do, and then you end it with something really vulnerable and humble, which is literally, that's the Lori Harder s'more. Like, that's what you're always doing. You're like, hi, no, it's not look at me, come with me. Cause like, I know I'm so beautiful that you think that I'm going to be this other thing. I'm really just like you. And it is such a constant with you. And it's just so cool. So thank you for that. I'm going to come back to you. So Al, what about for you? When you started putting that out there, how did you think people were going to take it? Or did you think, I don't know, is this going to seem like so weird? Or what allowed you to just start to do it in the very, very, very beginning? Oh no, you're muted. Hang on. I think you're muted.
Okay, I'm good now. My parents were entrepreneurs. So I grew up in this like entrepreneurial environment, this world of entrepreneurs. So I think it was in my DNA. And certainly like I worked in my parents' stores. So I I had that like knowledge firsthand. I watched my parents operate a business. I learned so early on, the importance of customer service and bending over backwards and the customer's king and all of that stuff was just embedded into me. And so, fast forward to doing other things and finding my own path and then deciding, to start Drybar. It was scary, but I think like any entrepreneur, it's like there's just like a part of you that is scared of it not working, but not scared enough to not do it. Like Lori was saying, it's like you can't get it out of your mind. It's the only thing you think about. And for me, I was always like, it's not life or death. There's a potential to lose a lot of money, which would really suck. In my case, I was losing my brother's money, so that was better. But nonetheless, I did put my life savings, which wasn't much at the time, but and I think that there's just, you have to have a certain, like, I think, skin to not be afraid to fail. And that is like, I don't know how to explain that other than like, it's just in you and you're like, I'm just going to do this. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, we're going to like lick our wounds and we're going to move on. And I think that was the other thing. I was like, we're all pretty like, between my brother and my ex-husband and we're all pretty like smart, capable people. If this business doesn't work, like we'll all go on and do other things. So, I've always had this mentality of like, everything will work out the way it's supposed to, not everything will work out, cause like we've all been hit over the head with this so many times. It's like, you can't understand why something is not working out the way you wanted it to work out. And then in 3 months or 3 years, you're like, oh, that's why, and it's really pretty amazing. And I really believe in that. So, I think that for me, it was like, I was definitely going to do this. I was definitely going to start Drybar. What was going to happen on the other end of it was a bit of a mystery, but I felt so strongly in my gut that like, this will work out one way or the other, and we opened also in the middle of a recession. And I cannot tell you how many people came up to me when we were building Drybar in that first Brentwood location. How many people came up to me and they're like, every business that has been in here has failed. This shopping center is dead. Even my brother was like, Alli, nobody is here, and it really was like that. And I was like, I know, but I think they'll come, I really believe that they're gonna, like, if you build it, they will come. I just felt so strongly like that. I was like, I know that there are, and again, I had some like proof of concept with my mobile business, which was teeny, but I was like, I know that there's enough women out there. And the feedback I've gotten from so many women that I was in my mobile business and just talking to people was like, there was so much excitement over this concept. I was like, I just know this is going to work. At least one is going to work. And at that point, we were just hoping it would be like 30 to 40 blowouts a day. We had never imagined it would be like 100 and 100, 250, which is really like what it is. And so I think it's like, I keep going, I go back, I feel like I go back to a lot of the same principles. Like you can't be afraid to fail. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And like, again, no one's going to die, we're going to all pick up our shit and we're going to move on, and I think that is like, it goes also back to this, like, life is short. You will always second guess yourself if you don't at least try. I mean, there's a very good chance it won't work. I mean, there's more things don't work than do, but there's also a really great chance and it will. And if it doesn't work exactly the way you planned it, it might work in some other way. And, and like Lori, I'm in that phase right now of reinvention. Drybar was a massive success and I'm so grateful for that. And it's given me so much in terms of platform and friendships and connections and networking. And I am here to tell you, I have leveraged the shit out of all of that. And I give you the same advice. It's kind of what I recorded yesterday, Lori, for our quickie for Big Girlfriends in Business. It was like, network, use your connections. And like, and I feel like this sounds bad, but like to say like we all use each other, but we do to an extent, in a good way. Like Lori and I, it's like, I get something from Lori gets something from me. I mean, it's all good. Like we support each other. We love each other. We want to help each other. And you can build that kind of relationship with so many people. Lori and I weren't really friends before we did each other's podcasts, but we also saw an opportunity in each other and a friendship built around that. But, and so it's like leveraging all of that stuff, paying attention, also being a person that gives to other people. I mean, Lori and I are both very generous with our time, and we both talk to lots of different people, and we do it, to pay it forward, and we do it to get it in return too, because we need it too. We all need that support system in all the different ways. But, you know, to go, I mean, gosh, I could go on, but to, you know, to go back to the original question, I do think that there is just this, like, I'm going to like see this through, and I'm going to exhaust every possibility and every opportunity I have to make it happen. And if it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, it is a really great learning. And I know that's cliche, and like we learn from our mistakes, and it's like, you don't want to hear that when you're in the process of like failing at something that you really want, but it is, you know, and it does often inform whatever's coming next, you know. And you know, I'm in the throes of it with my new jewelry business, which is like a direct to consumer business. And I'm like, I know nothing about, and I'm trying to figure it out. And I'm like pulling all these different levers and talking to all these different people and trying to like shift and pivot and change and see what works and what doesn't work, which I actually really love. You know, that's like the challenge. That's like the hunt for me. You know, it was the same thing of building Drybar. I really liked figuring out how to make this work. And even though Drybar felt like, I mean, Drybar was a little bit of an overnight success, but it wasn't easy. And as we opened in new markets, like I mentioned with the, you know, Northern California, we had to get really inventive and creative. And like, how do we get these women who like don't want anything to do with blowouts, obsessed with blowouts? And that, you know, so there's always something. And I think you just have to have like enough love for what you're doing, and compassion, or compassion, I guess too, but obsession with what you're doing. And which I think is also another key ingredient. I think there's an opportunistic thing, especially nowadays with entrepreneurs, are like, oh, I could do that. But if you don't really love it and like eat, drink, and sleep it, it's pretty hard to be, you know, obsessed with it.
Yeah, no, that's really, really powerful. And I took a class at UCLA at their Mindful Awareness Research Center. It took like years of classes there because I really needed to learn how to calm the F down. And one of the things that they showed us in the research was how people would make happiness a destination. Like, if this works, I'll be happy. And then there was all this data about the day after someone won the Oscar, and they literally did win. And now they are literally wrapped in blankets. Like, why didn't this change something? And someone in your world, Lori, I had Jillian Michaels on my podcast, and she's like, happiness is not this place you arrive. Like, it's not a destination. You can't even stay there. You can't even sustain it. But meaning and purpose is something that you can sustain. And so I do think that we live in this very sort of bubblegum world where people think like, I'll do this and then I'll be there, right? Versus I'm going to do this because it's what I have to do now. And I'll be okay either way, but this is what I have to do. Like, it's clear this is the divine download for the moment. What I want to ask you guys is, what's so fascinating to me is that it always seems as though the biggest issue people think they have is this, like, starting the business. It's like, I have a business problem. But I always say, you don't have a business problem, you have a courage problem. And what's fascinating is it's in the second part, which this is something that you both can speak to so well. When it comes time, when they've actually put it out there, and now someone's going to pay them, people will say to me, people in this program, people all over will say to me, I feel like I'm going to vomit, like receiving money. I think I'm going to throw up. Like, I can't charge. It's hard to charge. I don't know what to charge. I don't know. I'd rather just beta test it a few times for free. And you are both powerhouse women who are, we've already established, it's so obvious that you're kind and approachable and compassionate and loving and vulnerable, and didn't have to choose between those qualities and making more than enough money. So when it came time to charge people, how did you allow that abundance in like this without doing a whole song and dance and getting into that resistance of your upper limit? Let's talk about that.
But wait, I want to understand, you're saying that you hear from people that they don't want to charge people, like they're afraid to, because like they're worried. It's like almost like imposter, or like they're worried that people aren't
like, am I a fraud? I could do it for free, but as soon as I'm charging you to decorate something or organize your house or show up and do a sound bath, it's like, I'm going to throw up. Like, charging for it is.
Oh, interesting. Wow. Yeah.
I love that she's like, that's not even in my lexicon.
Love that about her. We'll be on the podcast together and she will be like, that's a thing. And I'm like, I want your brain so bad right now. Like, but it's so powerful because she literally frees me up of so many things. I'm like, wait, that's not a thing for her. It doesn't have to be a thing for me either. So I'll just share because I definitely know exactly what you're talking about.
But I understand that it's like you're worried that like, I get that. Like, you're worried that if you don't deliver and you've charged somebody, it's just so subjective that like it doesn't hit my radar. But yeah, go ahead.
I mean, the bigger question, and Lori, you're going to answer it, but it's kind of like, to say it in a different way for you, Alli, it's kind of like, think about how many people just are living with just enough, right?
Yeah.
And that is something that they could change if they were willing to be in a state of expansion, right? And to receive. And so there is this feeling of, who am I to have all this? I'll just have enough. There's a lot of shame around charging, and like, well, if I'm not curing cancer, why the hell would I charge someone $40 for something that could be disappeared if the rain comes and their hair gets wet? Like, that's where people go.
Yeah, you're right.
Because
I never thought about that. That's really interesting. Yeah. All right.
So Lori, what were you going to say?
I do know what you mean. And I know people like that now that thank you for having to spell it out for me. But, I do understand.
God,
yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, and I guess maybe it has to do with the fact that, like, watching my parents, and, by no means do I ever want to like cheat anybody out of anything. But I think it's like, I also feel like I mean, listen, I get people, like, a lot of people send a lot of stuff to me for free, which I think is weird and funny now, because when I couldn't used to afford stuff, nobody sent me anything. And now I can afford stuff and everybody sends me. It's a weird thing. Right. But I always like feel really like, I feel like I want to like post about it, because it's like it costs them money to send me something. And so I want to at least like do my part and like post about it and help them, and because I will always say, yes, send me something, or no, I don't want that, or in a nice way. But I do think you're right about, like, I've met a lot of people who are like kind of stagnant in their career or their business. And I'm like, oh, they'll start talking about it. I'm like, well, what about doing this, and this, and I have all these ideas. And they're like, no, I don't want to do all of that. And there is this, like, I just want to stay here because it's safe, and I don't have to put anything on the line, and I don't have to risk anything. And if it doesn't, and this is what we were talking about, right? If it doesn't work out, then what? It's like everyone's a little bit scared of, like, then what? And I think I've never been scared of the then what, and I guess that's kind of like really served me well, is that I'm not, and it's like a blessing and a curse. I don't really think things through, and it's served me well, and it's not served me well. It's like, that's why we needed to hire a professional CEO at Drybar, somebody who would like think about what was going to happen after I had a very like, knee-jerk reaction to fixing a problem, because there was going to be a fallout. I wasn't thinking about the fallout, and I think that has been like, it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, you're really in the flow state that you're just like, okay, you're not going to overthink it, which really is, like, yeah, it puts you sort of in the magnet. You're just like there already. You're not even thinking about it. So Lori, what about for you? I know that you and Chris teach this a lot. Like,
this is so good, because money is like the coolest thing ever, because it's probably I think it's more of a missing piece in like personal development and leveling up than people even talk about. And I think it's becoming more and more talked about, but it's an energetic exchange, and it's also a value. It's like money is not only going to help you level up by you charging it, but it's going to help your person that you are charging level up and also find value either within themselves, or it helps you show up. Like, let's say Alli was charging $2 for her blowouts. Guess what would happen when I got busy? I'd cancel it. And then me that scheduled the $2 blowout, who wanted the blowout, who wanted to look good, who wanted to feel good, wouldn't value that thing because there was no like higher price put on that.
Perceived value, right?
It's all perceived value. And, I think about the things that I spend a lot of money on that probably don't cost a lot to make. But to me, I've used those things as, let's just say, maybe I, as a goal of maybe selling courses or events or different things like that, I want to buy a bag, and I want to buy a very expensive bag. Why? Because it's making me feel a certain way. I have a perceived value of the way it's going to make me feel. I'm going to try to strive for that thing. It's going to make me work harder. It's going to make me show up, whatever that thing is, whether it's a bag, a trip, you want to give back to a charity, and that really motivates you and inspires you. Money is a very important way to level up the people that you will be working with. And so when I first started in the fitness world, what I did was, I worked at an LA Fitness for $6 per 30-minute session. This is while I was paying off a debt of over $300,000. I quickly did the math. We had just lost our house, our cars, all the things, and we were in debt. We borrowed all of our parents' money. They had zero money left. So there was a little bit of an intense moment there in my life. And I was working at this LA Fitness, charging only that, did some math and realized I probably wouldn't pay that off with like all the bills that we had until I was 80 years old. So I had this moment of like, you need to go start your own thing, and you need to charge a very large amount of money that feels so awful. It felt so awful. You guys, I went from $6 to going and charging $120 per hour for an hour session. Now, for me internally, that was like, I was screaming. I was freaking out. I was like, who am I to do this? Why wouldn't they just go over here? Like, how am I ever going to charge this amount of money? And what I did was I had to start finding like evidence first to start getting okay with that. Number one, I knew I needed to charge that much money if I ever wanted to get out of debt. Anybody in that situation where you're like, I actually need to start doing it, I just can't complete that gap. So some of the things that I did was, number one, I did a lot of money work with T. Harv Eker. He does Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, because it's all just a story that we have around someone's not going to like me, I'm selfish, my family's going to think I'm bad, money is evil, money's the root of all evil, whatever those beliefs are. So the first thing that you have to do is kind of get right with your money story and realize what money actually is and what money does. So there's a story of what you think it is, and then there's a story of what money really does. And money in the hands of women is the most powerful thing ever. You will look at Alli. How many jobs have you created, Alli? Like, how many amazing days have you created? How much have you been able to do in your life or give back? I know you have a charity event coming up. Like, look at all of the incredible things that happen when women have money and they step up and they charge what they want to charge. I'm not saying what it's worth or what they're worth. I'm saying what they want to actually charge.
Yeah, I mean, it really is like, it's like, I hate to say it like money is power, because I don't mean it in like the shitty manly way. You've heard that before, but it does enable, and it's right. And Lori's right. Like, I've donated a lot of money to a lot of really important charities, in my view. I've invested in a lot of businesses. I'm an investor in Lori's business, not to mention a bunch of other female founded businesses. And like, to me, I was just talking to Adrienne about this the other night. Like, I'm very, very, very grateful for my success and for the money I've made and the life that I've made because of the success of Drybar, that I really feel obligation isn't like the right word, but it's kind of like, I want to give back. Like, I feel like I want to help as many people as I can. I invest in as many businesses as I can. I donate as much as I can. I do a lot of stuff in that realm because I can. And I feel like it is a little bit like, hey, you've had a lot of success and like, give back. I mean, again, it's also part of like why I talk to like college students a lot. I talk to other women who are just starting out their business. It's like, that's not a financial thing, but it's something that I can do. And it really is less like, it's just, I didn't mean to be like, flippant about like laughing about the money thing, but it's like, it does make the world go round, and it does give us, it enables us to do a lot more good. And to Lori's point, like, I know, Lori and I both know so many women who have like started funds, and like so many women who are doing such great things. And it is really powerful money in the hands of women. It's like, I've joined a couple of boards recently because they wanted like women on it, it's just like, and so I mean, my advice is like, don't ever feel guilty about charging for what you offer. And yeah, there's like one person who's going to love it and think it's worth $300, and one person who's not, and that person's not going to buy it. And that's cool, and move on to the next. There's so many people in the world, there's so many people who will want what you're selling. And then there's people who won't,
Oh, it's so good. Everybody, this is such fire. It's so good. It's so good. Honestly, it's like medicinal. I really feel, especially this week, watching women in Afghanistan, what they're up against. I'm like, we need women with checkbooks. Like, that's what needs to happen, right now, this second, yesterday, like, needs to happen. When we had Barbara Corcoran on the podcast, I remember her saying, money is like blood in the body. It has to keep moving. So every time money's coming in, I already know where it's going right back out. Just keeps going right back out. So abundance creates more abundance. It's the opposite of I have more, you have less. No, it's the actual opposite of that. And you guys are such good examples of it. You're walking examples of that. What a gift. How much permission are you giving other people to rise because of the way you walk in the world? So here's the next question. Speaking of rising, I feel that what you both do is step all the way into your power, right? And when we're talking, and we're going to talk about that perceived value that you both mentioned in terms of the branding, in terms of the story that you're both genius at. But before we even go to the branding and the perceived value, there's a resonance in you, Alli, and there's a resonance in you, Lori, that like before I even met you guys, like actually connected, when I was aware of you, I could feel it. It wasn't, hey, I'm Lori Harder and I'm trying to do a thing. How's it going? It was like, hey, I'm Lori. Hi. Like, this is me, right? And Alli, you're the exact same way. It was like, and you've always been that way, you know, like we have my sister's best friend, this woman, girl, Terry, like I know her energy too. And like, she has that energy, but you've always had that energy since like, as long as I've even been aware of who you are. Like, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. I feel that so many, especially women, apologize in their energy for what they're doing, what they're saying. So there's always like this, hey, I'm trying to do a thing. Where does that light switch where you flick the magic all the way on, where do you find you're able to do that while also being the person who's like, I don't want to be arrogant and I don't want to be a fraud. I want to be real, but I also want to claim or open up to be a vessel for something that's actually worthy of standing fully in, rather than this like resistance to it, because so much of that resonance is what brings people in. It's that point of attraction.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I don't think I've always been this way. I think it was like a series of, I think when I met you, I had done a lot of work around it at that point. But I definitely was the person who was anxious and hid and apologized for everything. I mean, I'm from the Midwest. Like, you just start your sentence with, I'm sorry. Like, I'm so sorry for being here. I don't know. You bump into someone bumps into you and you're like, I'm so sorry. Like, sorry about that, for being in your way. So definitely, I had a couple of realizations when you just have these moments when you're looking at other women who like have inspired you and make you want to like do the thing and be the thing. And it's not that they're, you know, bragging or being a certain way. They're just being them. And I had a moment of realizing, like, apologizing for everything that you do or being yourself or for what you want is doing nobody favors. It's actually quite like it's blocking other people from believing that their dreams are safe as well. So when we're apologizing for ourselves, it makes people around us think that they should be apologizing for what they want or what they do. It's almost practicing. Like a lot of my life I view as like just a big, I've talked to so many people in personal development and just in the world too. And it's kind of like, I view my life almost as a game. Like, I'm like, okay, this is how I feel right now. Like I want to, let's say I'm in this group right now and it's like, here's what I've done and it's not much. And, you know, I don't like to share it and I don't like to brag. It's like, no, here's what I've done. Here's what I'm so proud of. I practice saying it without apologizing. And if I catch myself apologizing, sometimes I'm like, oh, didn't mean to apologize. I'm proud of that. And so you use your life as a practice for when you notice that maybe you want to apologize to someone, even if they bumped into you, you could just say, excuse me, or, or excuse you. Let's just like practice and see what it feels like to have a different thing come out of your mouth that is more empowering. And you're going to make a mistake over and over again. You're going to be like, crap, I apologized again. And you're going to just catch yourself and see if you can do it better the next time. It's funny. I went to a personal development, I was trying to learn how to put on events, you guys. And Jack Canfield did this thing called Train the Trainer, where it was a 3-week intensive. And it was all of these new people. And I had a lot of like anxiety at the time. And I was still in the phase of like having panic attacks and like feeling like I'm going to pass out when I'm in social situations. And there was this woman there who just caught on that I apologized for everything. And her name was Julie. I'll never forget her. She was super annoying and I'm so grateful for her, but I'd apologize with everything. And she'd go, don't be sorry, be you. And that was like her phrase for the 3 weeks. And she would say it over and over. And it actually annoyed me so much that I quit apologizing, because she would say it in front of all of these people. And so it's just, you can catch yourself, like start to catch yourself and be like, that's okay, but we're not going to do that anymore. You will actually get a completely renewed sense in your body. Like every time that you do it without apologizing, or you show up or you talk about something you're proud of, and you just talk about it without any context around it. You don't need to say, oh, Kathy, you look so nice. Oh, thanks. This was on sale. It was only $20. I don't care if it was on sale. I hope you spent $1,000 on it and you had the money for it if you wanted to. Like, do not do that. See if you can just not apologize for anything and fully start owning things, and let that be a little everyday challenge, and watch how much your life and demeanor will change and the women that you start to attract when you do that.
Oh, so good. Alli, what do you want to say about that?
Well, I think Lori really hit the nail on the head. I think that I always had it in me too, but it took, I grew up in Boca, not the opposite of the Midwest. So I didn't really grow up like apologizing in that way. And I had really strong role models in my mom and my dad. My mom was really strong. My dad was really strong. And my brother, I was actually like the wallflower late bloomer, which is like so weird now. If you know me, I never have thought that about me, but I was more quiet in my family. But I grew up around people who were very confident and sure of themselves. And maybe that's just like a free pass for me, but that's kind of, I always had a lot of confidence. And I do think it was also of like, hey, my parents, like, I was always like, they were always like they made me feel good about myself, in a lot of different ways. And I think that, just being a mom, it's like, I try to, I felt like my mom thought me and my brother were like the greatest humans that had ever walked the planet. And I really do think that of my children, and I tell them that. And I do think that's, I know I'm a little off topic here, but I do tell them that because I want them to grow up with a lot of confidence, because I think that confidence as a child really serves you well out in the world. At least that's my experience. And, my parents kind of like armed me. I didn't know it, but I was kind of armed with this, like, you can fucking do anything, it was always like that, and I moved to New York City when I was 18, which, a lot of parents like wouldn't be cool with their, I moved to New York. I didn't know a soul. And I was living in New York City. My mom like almost had a heart attack daily, because I would also rollerblade around the city. That's about it. And so I think it was like, it's been inside me, but I don't really think I owned it. And, until, when we started Drybar, and I kept finding like it was like building blocks of success. Like I decided to like go to beauty school against like everyone's like, what? You're going to beauty school? Like, that's weird. Like, what? It was just like, and I was embarrassed about it. I was like, I know, I don't, it didn't feel like cool enough or prestigious enough. And so I thought, like, I was a little embarrassed about it. And my parents were kind of like, everybody was a little bit, that is kind of a departure than how I felt like of what I just said. But then it was like, I kind of like, without thinking about it, goes back to what I said before, that I don't think things through without really thinking about it. I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I love. I love hair. I'm really obsessed with hair. I don't know what this is going to look like for me. I think I'm going to go back to New York and I'm going to work in really amazing salons, but I don't know. But this is what I like right now. And I've always followed that intuition that I felt was so strong in me. And I think a lot of people, the more people I meet and talk to, and like, like you're saying, Kathy, it was like, they are really afraid. And I'd be curious how many people on this call even today are like, there's this thing that you want to be doing, but you're afraid you'll be judged. You're afraid your spouse or your parents or whoever is going to be like, what? That's the stupidest idea, or that's so silly, And so we live in this fear. Like I did too. For me, it was like I was much younger and was able to step into that. Like, I'm just going to do this, you guys. Like, I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm just going to go do it, And so we live in this, like, I'm scared to like, goes back to like owning your power. I'm scared to go do this thing because of what everyone's going to think, even though it's what I really, really love. And my hunch is that when you follow the thing that you really love and you're able to like see it through and it works on some level, you're like, holy shit, I'm smart. And like, I know what I'm doing. And that's what happened to me with Drybar. It's like, I've told this story a lot publicly where like, once Drybar got bigger and we raised a lot of money with these really like smart people who all went, I didn't go to college. They went to like Stanford and Harvard. And I was sitting in a room with mostly men, you know, in suits who were fucking smart. They were really like genuinely smart guys, but they didn't have what I had. And it took me a little while to realize that, like, they didn't have the brain that I had. They didn't have the eyes that I had, the creativity that I had, and like the vision that I had for this brand. But they were great, and they were a great partner to have. And we were lucky to have them because they helped in a lot of other ways and things that I didn't know, which is also like the power of partnership. And that's a whole other question. But, you know, it was like, I think that I learned in those board meetings and those, you know, I had like, this was my superpower. I really knew hair. I knew how to run a salon. And that's like all I needed to know, because they couldn't do it without me. And I knew that. And once I like owned that, and I was like, yeah, good luck, you know, if I'm not here, it was never like, not like they were ever trying to get me out, but you know, it was, so I think, oh, you know, that's where like the owning your power comes in. And I think you can only do that if you're doing something that you so wholeheartedly believe you're good at, and you know you're good at it and you love it, and nobody can tell you otherwise, you know?
Oh, it's so true. And so much of what you just said leads us back to the conversation about like ego in the narrative versus like your true self, right? Because Alli, those guys who went to Harvard or Stanford or whatever, that's a story as part of like their footprint in Earth School of things that they did. Meanwhile, the greatest resources that we all have is like your passion, your tenacity, your grit, your open-heartedness, your creativity, your willingness to try things and take risks. And so I think for me, I mean, I've had so many moments. We've interviewed almost 500 people on the podcast. I've had to interview you two. And then I've had to interview also like Matthew McConaughey and Priyanka Chopra. And like, there are moments where my ego is like, oh, ego versus ego. Like I'm nothing here in this moment. And I'm like, well, that's not what we're doing here. And every human is ultimately really a bigger self, which is like this soul, this energy, this something. And all those people really just want to be seen. And so I always feel like at least I could do that. Like I can make people feel seen. I can show up, I can be present, and the rest it'll just come through. It'll just be there, right? When you just get your ego out of the way. So for me, it was kind of a gift that I went to Florida State and like I had nothing on anyone, like barely with any of that stuff. Nothing was going to be impressive other than maybe being able to be present. I want to ask you guys two last things. One thing I have to ask you, because you're both so genius at it. Like there's people who are good at it, excellent at it. There's a genius when it comes to branding. And we talked about the perceived value and the value in the story, right? The story of like, it's not a blowout. This is like your time. It's like Goonies, like up here, it's their time. Down here, it's our time. Like that's the story of why you spend $40. So let's just quickly talk about branding and coming up with, because now Alli, you've done it over and over again. Lori, you've now done it 14 times with products and courses and on your events. There's always a story. There's the story, there's the name of the thing, there's the colors of the thing. Where does that take shape for you so that you can help us as people who are working towards that, people listening? That has to happen. That story being told has to happen. And people skip right over that. Like I finally have the confidence and I have a product, but I just sold it as like, it's a candle. It's made of non-toxic wax. It's like, no. So I would love both of you to just touch on that for a second.
Well, I mean, you know, you're right. I mean, it's like you can have the best product ever, the best thing ever, but if it's not packaged well, and I don't mean like just the packaging, it's everything. It's like the experience that the customer has with it, the experience they have when they go on your website, every touch point matters, whether it's like an online thing or it's in store. I mean, obviously brick and mortar is more my area, which, you know, like I said, my parents had their own store. So I experienced kind of really what not to do. They, you know, and we kind of went the other way with Drybar and knew that like experience was everything and creating the experience at all the different touch points. But I'll tell you, like, I don't consider myself like a branding expert. I mean, you might look at my businesses and think that, but it's like, that's not me. And recognizing what you're not good at, like, let that be the biggest lesson today. Recognize, speaking of ego, what you're not good at and what you are. And what you're not good at, get somebody who's really good at it to do it. You know, I mean, there's no shame in that. Like, you know, it's like the reason that Drybar branding is the way it is because my ex-husband was a branding genius and he knew that, and he taught, and now I know probably more than the average person because I was taught that, and I learned so many lessons along the way, and like how there needs to be a common thread through things, and how you need to like surprise and delight people, and all these things that we do. I learned that it was like on the job. But you know, if without those things, you know, you might have like a moderately successful business, but you'll never get up to that next level because people love and want that. You know, it's like we created a love brand. We created a brand that people loved our service and what we were offering, but they loved the way they felt when they walked into Drybar, the music, the decor, the customer service, the phone charging stations, like the list goes on. It was kind of something for everybody. And all of those things really matter. And to your point, it is probably one of my biggest pet peeves when I walk into a business and I'm like, why? Like, why did someone not think of this? You know, why is the place not clean? Why is it not organized? Why is the music like this? Why? I mean, you can imagine what happens to me when I walk into a business and I'm like, I don't, you know, it's like, there's so much opportunity here that you're missing. And so if you don't recognize that, you might want somebody on your team who does, you know, and I think that's like such a massive takeaway. And it's something that that I've spent a lot of money on. We've spent a lot of money on in all our businesses, is making sure, you know, if you go and you look at OK Humans, our newest business, or Squeeze, or Drybar, or Becket and Quill, like it's pretty tight in terms of like branding and experience, because we know how important that is. Like there's no way you can make anything work without that, you know, at the level that, you know, you want it to work at, if you want to get that big.
That is one of the most important things we've ever heard on the podcast in any of these programs, because it has to be an experience. And she's talking about service-based businesses and product-based businesses, as well as businesses that have to do with some kind of an experience factor. Like that has to be gotten. I just got a Louis Vuitton and I was like, I wanted to do a story over it. Although I was like, oh, people are going to say, oh, why is she doing it? But it's the box, it's the ribbon, right? It's the whole freaking thing. You're just like, yes, like it feels so good. So
it's so interesting about that, because it feels good that you can afford to buy a Louis Vuitton bag, you know, and I know that there's this, like, I don't like to put that stuff on like Instagram either. Like if I go buy a Gucci bag and I put it on Instagram and then people are like, oh, it's like an eye roll, you know, it's like, I get that. But there is that like, oh, I feel really proud that I could go and buy this. And like, you like the pomp and circumstance around it. And we like that. It's, you know, it's like, it's better than it just coming in like a brown paper bag. It's an experience, and there's an experience at so many levels, you know, it's of everything that we do. And it all really matters.
Yeah. And maybe we both should be posting that stuff, because I think that women especially need to see women being like, yeah, and you can have that too. Why shouldn't you have that?
And sorry, I'll stop talking in a second, but it does remind me of a story. You know, you probably know, I don't know if you've had her on your podcast, Jamie from A Cosmetics.
Of course. Yeah.
And you know, I remember she was on the cover of, I think it was like Forbes or Fortune, for being like one of like a self-made millionaire. And I was asked to be on that too. And I declined it because I was like, you know, I'm just not comfortable. And I remember having a conversation with Jamie about it. And I was like, I think it's awesome. But like, I was nervous because, well, first of all, I have kids, and I got weird in my head. Like people try to kidnap my kids and weird shit like that. But also, you know, I was like, I'm not comfortable. And she's like, I want women to know. Because she had, and Jamie is such a great story, because she had nothing. She had no money before she started her business. She really had nothing. And she's like, I want other women to see that like somebody can come from nothing. And Jamie's like Oprah level.
Oh yeah. She sold her company for 1.2 billion. Lori knows, she's a good friend of mine, and she's the nicest person. She was a Denny's waitress. Like, yeah.
And she wanted me to have that message that like, no, I'm going to be on the cover of this because I want people to know you can do it too, which I always loved her response to that.
Yeah. You see, guys, at every level, there's still nuances to all of these topics. So Lori, what do you think about all that stuff with the experience and the branding and all of that?
Oh God, I loved listening to Alli, because it's so cool to hear how brick and mortar is essentially the same as like service-based businesses. Because at the end of the day, like there's, you know, let's say you're selling a wine glass, let's say you're selling a Blowout, let's say you're selling shoes. It's kind of like there's so much of the same thing, that your story is what's going to make the person kind of perceive the value. So around anything you're doing, if a lot of you are doing coaching or courses, or, you know, you have a product that you want out, it's not about even, it's so funny. I used to get so caught up, like sometimes branding to me, I struggled with it so bad, you guys, because I am like I'm the person who wants to say like 75 pages for one thing, because I don't know how to say it's like, at this event, you're going to do this and learn this. And then it's like 40 things. And it's like, people are like, I'm lost. Like you just said so much that it's actually not even for anyone anymore. When it's for everyone, it's for no one. So you have to remember, the more clear you can be with your story, I think the better. Well, I don't think it's the better with your branding. And at the end of the day, what you're doing is you want to speak clearly in your audience's words, which your audience is usually how you would speak. Because you're talking to someone who maybe is the you of 2 to 5 to 10 years ago. Speak clearly to your audience of where they are. So be able to like really identify with where they're at. Maybe that's through a story that you've experienced, and then show them through the experience how they're going to feel later. So speak clearly to where they feel now, what they feel right now, and speak clearly to how they're going to start feeling in this new way. Because a lot of times we tell them like what they're going to get. Oh, you get this great pair of shoes. It's like this, I don't even know how to talk about shoes. I don't know. It's got great leather. You're going to, it's got these straps. Like you're talking about the features of the shoe, when really all we want to know is when I go walk in and like see maybe my, ex-boyfriend at the bar, am I going to feel so good because these shoes, I just feel like my Beyonce power moment. Like that's what you're supposed to explain. Like this is how you're going to feel in these shoes. And it's so easy to forget that part. So whenever I'm, you guys, right now I'm doing canned alcohol, like it's a can of alcohol, but there's so much story attached to it. It's about being female funded. It's about giving back to women. It's about women blazing a trail in the alcohol industry. It's about having conversation starters on the can, like we're doing it different. Like it's the story that's attached to that. So it's getting people attached to your product through the story and how they're feeling as they're reading it and seeing it.
I love that. I love the conversation starters and the female founded, and it's going to just continue to do so well because of all of those pieces. So the last question is, you two, and you have a third person with you, your podcast. Tell us where they can listen to the podcast and one thing that you both love about the podcast, why they should listen.
Well, I'm obsessed with it because I'll tell you that it brought some of the best women into my life ever. And I think Kathy and Alli, you both have podcasts outside of that as well. The reason that I wanted to even start the podcast and reach out to them is because I really wanted those women in my life, and I wanted to have conversations with other women with those women and start this whole just conversation around starting things. I knew Alli was in a new place with her new business. I knew Britt was in a new place with her new business. I really wanted to share those conversations and be in them. Like, I think we all know when we start something, there's a portion of it that's selfish, but you know that selfish portion is also going to serve other people as you learn. So it was definitely like, I am so ready to have these conversations and create this accountability and this safe space for myself while also simultaneously creating it for other people. So that's the thing that I absolutely love about it. It's called Girlfriends in Business. And I can't remember your other question.
No, you answered it. I said, why do you love it? And what's one thing you think people will love about why they should listen? So those are good answers. Alli, what about for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like similar to what Lori said. I mean, given, the opportunity to be able to, again, give back, and talk about the things that we've learned, the struggles that we're having. I'm very, very open book, very vulnerable on Instagram and all of the things that I do, to the point where my kids are like, you really tell people everything, Mom. And I don't tell people everything, but I do tell a lot. And I don't know where that comes from or why that is, but there is a part of me that just, it's probably that like give back component thing, because when I was growing up, there wasn't that opportunity. Or even like 10 years ago, there wasn't that, where you could like get like firsthand advice from someone who's been through what you're going through. And I think that's largely like what attracted me to this idea of Girlfriends in Business. Cause it's like, I mean, and the roundtables are my favorite thing that we do, because Brittany and Lori and I, if you've had a chance to listen to it, we just kind of like have a conversation like this, we talk about the struggles. We talk one of my favorite things we do is like these highlights and lowlights of like what went well for us that week and what didn't. And I think inevitably I always like learn something from them, and I learn something from myself, because there's really something powerful about once you get something out of your head and say it out loud. Like even today, I'm like, I never thought about some of this stuff that we're talking about today. It's like, it's the power of like opening up and talking about things, which is why I think it's so powerful, to do that, which is why like I'm so excited about Okay Humans too. It's like, there's so much power in opening up and talking about things, and then being vulnerable and sharing them with other people. And then people being like, oh man, I feel that way too. And then it just like opens, there's just so much, there's so much learning and giving and receiving that, it feels really good. I always walk away from our podcast, our sessions that we do together with this, like, man, that felt good. Like a clearing, I love a good clearing. And I think that's kind of what the podcast allows us to do. And I hope it inspires other women to do that with their own group of friends, like get together, talk about what's going on, share their problems, ideas, things they're excited about, and that's what we do.
Yeah. And to bring it full circle, you both said early on, it's so important to be around the people who won't squash your dreams, right? Who you can actually feel are going to help you rise. And that's why I would love for everybody to subscribe to the podcast, because it's very vulnerable. And the three of you are like, basically we're able, some of those episodes we're able to sort of listen in on a mastermind where you're saying like, well, this didn't, oh, well, that's interesting. Well, how would you have done it different? And it's such a gift. And I've said often that James Clear, I asked him, what's the most important habit? And he said, who you spend time with. That's the most important habit. So
we keep, I so believe that. And if you have like toxic people in your life who are not supporting you, get them out. Truly. I mean, I so believe that. I love that. I'm so happy you said that. I think that's so true. It's like, yeah, it can be really toxic for you and can really like keep you down.
100%. And so you guys have provided that space where just by listening, we do feel, because you've dropped that fourth wall and you are so vulnerable and so loving, it gives people a chance to feel like, oh, these are friends of mine. Like I'm getting to be there in the room. So thank you for creating that show, because you have a million things to do, plus plan a wedding. Alli, you have so much on your plate. So it's like for you to have taken the time to add yet another thing. I think I love that it's helping you, but it's very generous. Just the way you went about it. You could have done it. You have so many connections. You could have literally just interviewed people and just kept it really simple. It would have still been great, but it's awesome that you did it that way. So tell us where we can follow and shop and buy and support and all of those things for both of you. And we'll put all of this in the show notes too.
Well, my podcast, Lori and I have a podcast called Girlfriends in Business. And then I have a podcast that I do with Adrian, my fiance, called Raising the Bar. And then there's, for businesses, Drybar, Squeeze, Okay Humans. Somebody asked what Okay Humans was. It's a talk therapy,
amazing
face-to-face talk therapy concept. We only have one location right now in Brentwood, but we're franchising. So there you go. And then I have my jewelry company, Becket and Quill, where, basically everything I'm wearing is from. And that's just becketandquill.com. And yeah.
So great.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay. So we do Girlfriends in Business together, which is so fun. And then I have Earn Your Happy podcast, and then everything right now in my life is all litepink.com, LITEPINK.
Amazing. Guys, do me a favor. If you're watching this with us here, I'd love for you to take a screenshot and tag Lori on Instagram and Alli on Instagram, and just maybe put one thing that you are walking away with. I will then repost a few of them, but it's a cool thing. Oh, she's so generous. It's a great thing for people to be able to walk away today with something you just got, right? We can pay it forward. God knows we need to be putting more light in the world this week, extra more than you would have done last week and the weeks before. Girls, I love you. Thank you so much for being here. This is just so nourishing and fun, and you make it so easy. So thank you guys. And thank you everyone for being so supportive and loving in the comments. It was great.
That's great.
Thank you so much for having us. I know I can speak for Alli too, that I'm sure we both we are so full. Like my heart is so full. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah,
Thank you guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.